And so like I said, we will be recording it so that you guys can watch it later. My name is Erin Harlow, and I'm the horticulture agent in Columbia County, which is Lake City. I've been here about a year, and then was actually in Jacksonville for several years before that. So welcome everybody. I see some of you have found the chat box, which is excellent. And we've asked you to put where you are coming from this morning in there. And so we've got, we've got Zephyr Hills and Gainesville, Goose Creek, South Carolina, Ocoee, Orlando, Port Charlotte, Inverness, Kissimmee, we've got Baker, Plant City. So all over, and let's see a few more. Some more Orlando and Apopka people, Pasco County, North Carolina, excellent. So we've got all the way up and down. I did have somebody from out of country want to join, but she said it's in the middle of the night, so she'll be watching it from Australia later. So I said that's perfectly understandable. So this is part of our Victory Garden series. Some of you are part of our Victory Garden group. If you'd like to be, I will put that in the chat box. Oh, there it is. If you want to register, Tia's already put that in there for us. And then we'll put up the videos where you can find this video in the chat box as well. So I'll be checking the chat box throughout. We'll hold questions until the end, unless there's something really pressing that comes up. Just go ahead and put it in there, like I said, and he can answer those at the end. We ask that you keep your videos and microphones off throughout the presentation, and we will help you with that as well. And then, John, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, if you can get that to work.
Okay, let me go ahead and pull that up here.
I see Tia already put in the chat box the video link, so you can check out the previous ones and then any upcoming ones. And we typically have those on YouTube, usually by Friday. Perfect.
Okay, does it look okay?
Looks awesome. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and shut my video off and let you take it from here.
Awesome, thank you, Erin. It's good to see some familiar names on here. Thank you for being here today, this morning. I'm gonna try and keep it short and sweet here, just like Microgreens. And I just wanna, jump into it here, try and hopefully, typically I do this class and I can provide people with some of the basics here, like in how to do it yourself. And we would follow up this portion of my talk with that. But fortunately, it doesn't really require a lot of sophisticated equipment. And I really encourage people to go out and go try this themselves on their own, like after this class. So what is a microgreen is, the basics of the first matter here. And I guess how did it get its name? And I guess the big thing that you want to think of here is it's the cotyledon stage of plants as they mature. So it's basically the first true leaf that develops from these plants is what you're eating when you eat the microgreen. I guess another thing about the origin is that you're kind of started in some vegetable gardening books, like I think roughly in the 80s, or catalogs in the 1980s. They started marketing huge amounts of seeds specifically for this purpose of growing a lot of them when they're small. And it was also kind of a marketing thing, like you could grow a lot of them in different colors. So they call them vegetable confetti and that type of thing as well. So, but specifically, I think it was out in the West Coast and San Francisco area that they kind of became a thing, and they've been growing in popularity ever since. So something to keep in mind here is the difference between what a sprout is and a microgreen. Sprouts they don't need light. They don't have ventilation requirements. They don't need air or anything and they don't need a growth medium. When you see those bean sprouts and stuff that are sold in supermarkets and that type of thing, they are typically they're planted within water, and they can be grown completely in the dark. Whereas the microgreens, they need all these environmental requirements, the same things that like a mature plant would need. But something to keep in mind as well is that the harvest period is pretty brief for them, and that they're pretty small, and that the culinary they also differ in these other ways, that the culinary uses are a little bit different as well, because they actually take on the flavor of a mature plant. So just to basically break them down here, microgreens are usually the difference between baby greens and microgreens. The microgreens are usually less than 2 inches tall, and the baby greens are a little bit taller, and I mentioned, it's just that leaf is starting to mature and take on more of the characteristics of a full-grown type of what you would get in a salad or something like that. So, but technically there's no legal definition, there's no botanical definition here. So it just goes by, roughly what we're calling it. Maybe at some point in the future in food laws and stuff like that, this thing might develop. But as of now, there is no breakdown between what these are legally. So some of the things to keep in mind with is that there's the advantages of them. They require very little room. The time of year and climate do not impact them. They have concentrated nutrition and taste, and there's a fast harvest window. So typically there's a low cost, but it depends on the plant that you have as well. So disadvantages: relatively short shelf life. They don't hold very well, even in the refrigerator. There is a short harvest window, and you have to get really good with timing it if you want a consistent supply of them. And yeah, as I mentioned, the seed prices vary, so some of them can be quite expensive. So just to break down some of your basic categories of microgreens, there's the brassicas, so the mustard family. Radishes also are in there, and but they tend to be very fast growing. The intermediate area, you have amaranth, beets, carrots, chards, a few brassicas. You kind of think of these as a little bit slower growing, and then you have your true really slow. Some carrots, most herbs are slow, and marigold, and some of the other flowers I think tend to be pretty slow. So here are some examples of common to somewhat common plants that people grow as microgreens. You've got amaranth. People like that because of the color. It tends to be more of a challenging one, and I'll go into that in a little more detail here. Basil, cilantro, coriander. So you would grow these largely because of taste. They tend to add quite a bit of flavor to anything that you're eating. You can throw them in with another, mature salad leaves and that type of thing. And here's all your brassicaceae. These you tend to grow more towards actually filling up the salad. They kind of have an earthy taste, not a very strong taste. Some of them can be kind of strong, and some people don't really like some of them, but it varies. But yeah, in this family, you've got broccoli, kale, bok choy, Tokia bacana, which is one of the fastest growing of them all, mustards, arugula, cabbage, and garden cress. So there's there's a lot here. There's a lot to work with. There's a lot of color, and these kind of provide the foundation and an entry point for people to get into this. These are some of the easiest to grow for relative to all these microgreens. Some other ones that people grow are endives, peas. Peas are a good one because they're sweet, and most microgreens really don't have a lot of sweetness to them. So radishes, they're technically they're related to the brassicas, but people tend to think of them a little different because they have like a spicy flavor a lot of the time. And then beets. So beets and chards they're like the same thing. I think they're Beta vulgaris, and like they tend to be pretty colorful, and they have like a real earthy taste as well. It's different than the brassicas, and so some people kind of like them. If you don't like the brassicas, which kind of tend to be a little like a little more intense with their flavors sometimes. So yep, and then there's plenty of others out there, and in terms of what you can and can't grow, pretty much most of you can. The only thing that you might want to hold back on is thinking about certain things that have a hard time forming the microgreen, because of the way they're watered and like the physiological aspects of like how they grow. Lettuces are not very firm until they mature, so they tend to stick to each other, and they are a difficult plant to grow as a microgreen. So that's just something to keep in mind. Some of these others that are intermediate or difficult to grow, like amaranth, is kind of in the same boat, but like it's easier to grow than lettuce. So, and other things not to grow are solanaceae, so tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, eggplants. The leafy structures of these plants are poisonous. They are full of alkaloids, and like overall they should be avoided for eating, except for their fruiting bodies, or in the potato like the tuber. So equipment. A lot of people think of the 10 by 20 trays as the standard way to grow them, but really there's tons and tons of options. I tend to advocate pie pans. There's other, food containers, plastic containers, that type of thing work pretty well. Disposable plates even. And you can get most of your supplies from local garden stores, and stores that, if you want to get a little more sophisticated with the type of setups you use, you can also go to hydroponic stores. They have a lot of things that you need, like the fiber mats that you can grow them in. And online, most of the stuff is, very accessible. The supplies that you need are online now. So here are the containers that people think of most of the time, or associate mostly with growing microgreens. They're 2 inches to 3.5 inches deep, and you probably want to make sure that the food grade, like the plastic, is of food grade. There's different grades of plastic, but especially if you're going to get into this as more than a hobby, like there are things you have to keep in mind, and food grade plastic is something. But like for at home purposes, it's probably fine just to grow them in little things. It's not like you're going to be eating from these all the time. So here's just an example of how people can set these up, and like a lot of the diversity of plants that you can be growing from these in this method. So where to get seeds? There's a few places that market specifically for this and sell the seeds in bulk that you need to grow in these big volumes. The Mountain Valley Seed Catalog is a big one. And online, a few companies kind of have a way of doing this. Johnny's is I think it's Johnny's Seed Company. They probably have the biggest selection of microgreens available, microgrown seeds. And but outside of that, there are other companies like Burpees and True Leaf Market that also market or sell the seeds. And they might be more limited in certain ways, but there's plenty of online retailers. Now the price, this is from 2017, so it's probably changed a little bit. 1 ounce for, let's see here, for some of these, so you can see here like dark opal basil, red Reuben basil are pretty expensive, but if you get some of the more common ones like the lemon basil, the prices can go down quite a bit. If you're getting into more exotic things, typically the prices are a lot more expensive. And then like especially if you are growing more toward the brassicas, like cabbages, broccoli, etc., they tend to be pretty cheap. So seed germination, it's just like if you're trying to start things, trying to grow starts for gardens, pretty similar conditions to what you would want for that. Probably want to use like a potting mix, a germination mix, and 65 to 75 degrees is ideal. Sterile soil is probably ideal. You're really going to avoid a lot of the mishaps that you could potentially run into if you're using a type of mix that is not using, I guess, soils that have been collected from the earth, like stuff that's been sterilized previously. So, and then outside of that, it's just the same thing: moisture, and then like do not overwater them. And some of the seeds require that you soak them, kind of like the beets, cilantro, buckwheat, peas, sunflower, nasturtium, and popcorn, if you want to go that route, grow corn seeds. But overall, most of them don't require a lot of prior soaking. So here's a big breakdown is thinking of growing them in the germination media versus the fabric mats. The media, it's more easily available. You can get this stuff from like almost any garden store, big box stores, and it's typically a lot more flexible for different types of containers. And the bad part is like there usually is like more potential for the contamination we were talking about, and it can be a lot more messy. But so the fabric mats, they're less messy. They tend to have really, really easy harvest because you can just cut them right along the edges and like not get them into the germination media or anything like that. You just cut them right off, and you can hold it up and just cut them off from the scissor and let them drop. But I guess but the downside is there's usually more setup and forethought, and it tends to be more expensive too. So yeah, and your germination media that you use, there's a lot of things that are out there. You can, peat moss, coconut coir, fiber, sphagnum moss, vermiculite. You can get mixes that are geared towards germination, and will probably be the best way to go is getting something that's a combined product already. So, and then think about your germination media, like on top of that, your seed density for germination. Usually for most things, it's about 10 seeds per square inch. So you've got fabric material, like as mentioned, that you can utilize like as well. If you use burlap, try and get the organic material because it hasn't been treated with some harsh chemicals that a lot of the more industrial purposes for using burlap are used for. And the other thing is that's available is BioStraight felt. Usually this is more of a hydroponics type product, and you can get it from some of these specific hydroponic oriented places that sell that type of stuff, like online as well. So And then you can cut that biostrate felt into micro mats. Some places even sell them as pre-cut mats as well, usually like in 5x5s. These are wood fiber is what they're made out of. But also keep in mind what you're trying to grow. The soil, the germination media is a little, like some seeds need that more than others. So for example, like beet, buckwheat, cilantro, chard, nasturtium, peas. But just go ahead and also check the labels for the seeds, like, and see if there are anything specifically about the germination requirements for them when you get them. Another consideration is a lot of these seeds, they have mucilaginous coats. It's even more important that you keep them wet, because when these coats dry out, like the seeds are kind of somewhat being signaled that they're not ready to germinate yet. So they need consistency a little bit more. And another thing is they tend to stick to each other. So just something to keep in mind for basil and chia and watercress. Another thing, it's usually not too big of an issue, but pH, you might want to get little strips, like to test the pH for the water you're using. I guess it's typically suggested that it's 6.0, slightly acidic. And if you need to make it a little more acidic, you can just add a little bit of lemon juice and try and mix it with the water and test it out from there to try and get it where you need it to be. Light cover is another consideration. Some plants require more cover than others, and like some of them can deal with no cover at all. So like broccoli, cabbage, some of the herbs, oregano, thyme, like don't require any cover. But then, I would err on the side of covering most of them, because there tend to be things that are more like finicky than others here, and I would just keep them covered up for a few days, typically. So some of these ones that are particularly sensitive are the radishes, carrots, Swiss chard, etc. And sometimes they'll germinate with some light and stuff like that as well. But overall, you might want it's probably better to cover most of these, except for the ones where it says don't cover at all. So here's a comparison between the same, like after you release the plants that have been germinating and haven't been exposed to light, and what they look like 9 hours later. So you can see here that the color has changed significantly for the ones that, particularly the microgreens that are more green. You can tell that they've changed from being yellow to being green. They've grown, actually, like you can see there's visible difference between how big some of them are. So something cool that their lives aren't very long and they respond very quickly, much quicker than we're used to thinking plants growing in a lot of senses. And here's a comparison of growing on soil versus growing germination medium soil and a mat. And as you can see, on the left-hand side, you have the germination medium, and you have the mat on the right-hand side. And they look pretty different. And you can tell that when you go to harvest some of these, that it's going to be a lot messier if you're growing it in that germination medium. So that's the big advantage of growing it on these mats. So I guess, yeah, just thinking of maintenance, usually you don't have to do a whole lot. You might want to just mist them twice a day from above. Like I mentioned, keep them covered in the dark for 4 to 5 days. And then once those cotyledons are emerging, that's when you can start putting them into the light. And you remove that cover after they start to emerge. So just when you fill the container with the medium, you want it to be moist when you're putting the seeds down a little bit, and that it's patted down a little bit, that it's not too powdery kind of, and then you want to press the seeds in just a little bit is typically what you want to do. And like I mentioned, 10 to 12 seeds per square inch for the smaller seeds, 6 to 8 seeds per square inch for larger seeds. Yeah, and this is just showing you what it should look like when they're once you've pressed them in and you're ready to set them in the dark somewhere. And as you can see, they're uniformly distributed. You don't want too many of them popping up in the same place and out competing each other for light and space. This is pretty ideal setup here. So go ahead and then when you're done with it, just make sure it's very moist. You don't want it excessively moist, but just kind of so that you know that it'll stay wet for roughly 12 hours. If it's drenched still after 12 hours, you probably put too much water in there. And you mist it twice a day, lightly, and then you'll get the cotyledons to emerge, and then you can start placing them in the light. So you can keep them inside, and one of the things that to keep in mind is the direction of the light. If you're growing them in little pans or something and putting them next to a window, you might want to rotate them 180 degrees each day so that they grow a little more uniformly and not just to one side. So these tend to be pretty easy to grow, but if you start having problems, these are kind of the things that you need to troubleshoot and think about is seed concentration, whether you too much or too little, not enough light. Once you put them into the light, that's something that if they're only getting 4 hours, that's probably not enough. You probably need about 6 hours of light. Maybe not direct exposure, but a decent amount of exposure to the light throughout the day. Temperature, make sure it's kind of in that range that we talked about. I think that you're probably okay in the upper 60s to lower 80s. And irrigation, you don't want it too dry or too wet. You want it just a little moist, like we were talking about. And then also your consistency. You can kind of, for lack of a better words, you can freak out the seeds if you're not consistent with some of these things. Like this, particularly those mucilaginous seeds that are covered with that stuff. If they dry out, they might kind of have to start all over again, and it might take longer. So here's what excessive water looks like. You start to get it turning into mush because bacteria are getting in there and breaking down the cell walls of the plant. So definitely a situation you want to try to avoid. And here's just another example of growing these plants, after they've been in the dark, before and after you put them in one of these windows. Just they went from being yellow and they turned green. So, and just going back to a couple of things that I kind of hit on here. Most of the seedlings, they don't need fertilizer. They got such a short life, but that they don't really need it. There's usually enough in the mediums that you're growing in. But some people do advocate, in some situations, to use a very weak fertilizer, very, very dilute. So maybe I don't know, probably a tenth of what you would use for garden plants for garden vegetables, for example. So they don't need a whole lot, and you don't really want to be putting too much into them either. So because you're going to be eating it, and like it's just that stuff's not going to go everywhere. Like in a garden type situation, that stuff is going to expand out. Like I would err much more towards the side of not using that stuff. So water is needed, but don't overwater. And it's best if you can water it from the bottom and you don't even use mist. And I'll get into showing you guys some ways to do that here in a little bit. And I guess in particular, keep peas on the dry side. So another, like I mentioned with lettuce, some of these plants have a hard time overcoming like the forces of water, basically, cohesion and adhesion that occur within water, where the molecules like will hold things down. And so that's something to keep in mind with, like, if you're growing amaranth as well. There are a few others, I think, that do this as well, but I tend to try and grow the ones that don't have this problem so that I don't run into it. So like I mentioned, here's just another page here for your information, and I'll try and provide this as well to Erin after this is all over, like in a PDF form for everybody that's here, so they can have access to all this as well. But these are just some of the growing requirements that we've talked about. So harvesting, this is the next step. You basically want to wait until they're all 2 to 3 inches tall. I guess ideally, like, it's best at night or morning when it's cool and in shade. You can use a scissors or an electric knife, kind of what you would use to like carve a turkey, basically, something like that. And once you're done, you probably want, to use like a salad spinner, wash them, use a salad spinner, that type of thing. Then you can stick them in plastic containers, or you can just use them fresh right there. Cut just above the soil line, as you can see, like what they're doing here. You probably don't want to consume all of it though. Like you could still eat the stems, they're fine, but the roots, there's just too much going on there, and it's probably not stuff that you want to eat. And the majority of the nutritional value is going to be in the leaves anyway. So I guess some options here. Once you're done with it, you can leave them. You can try and get another flush out of them. Some of them do this more than others. I guess it can be complicated, like dealing with the soil stuff. Sometimes, like, what do you do with this stuff? Probably just want to compost it. Like, that's what a lot of people do. You're only probably going to get one use out of most of the material you used, the growing medium or the mats. So just some things. You can throw these in for all sorts of stuff. Soups, stews, salads, sandwiches, main dishes. I guess the thing is that they're smaller, but they tend to have more flavor. The flavor is much more intense than what you would get from like the adult leaves. And there is some ongoing science looking at how nutritious they are as well, and they tend to be on the side of being a little bit more nutritious as well. So how much more? Well, one study by University of Maryland, that they tend to, some of these microgreens had 4 to 40 times more concentrated nutrients. In particular, red cabbage had 40 times more vitamin E, 6 times more vitamin C. But so I guess those are the big ones. Some of these vitamins that they can look at real easily. Buckwheat, it has a higher concentration of protein in these microgreens. I guess it's the same as oats. Once it's like they're ready for harvest. So yeah, I guess 5 to 10 days. It's kind of up to you. You can kind of keep them going for a while if you don't want to stick them straight into the fridge, if you want to keep them fresh, but like keep them fresh longer. But 5 to 10 days is usually your window that you're going to be harvesting. So here is what I had some 4-H'ers do this summer. I sent them these, and I will go ahead now and show you a YouTube video that like one of our master gardeners put out here.
Did you know you can grow your own microgreens? Well, many people enjoy them, but it can be a little expensive. And Mary Ann Pagora is here with us, our master gardener, and is going to give us all the information we need, right? Oh, thank you for being here. This is a neat one here. I'll explain this one a little bit later on, but define microgreens for us.
Okay, microgreens are little vegetable seedlings. They've only been growing for a week or so. They're very quick and easy to grow. And the neat thing is these have so much nutrition in them. They have all the nutrition for a baby plant. So these little microgreens have up to 40 times the nutrition of the big plant. So they're very, very good for you.
Wow. Now,
Hey John,
be a number of different things. Like what's in
can
this?
you share your screen for with the video on it, please?
Oh, is it not? It's not being shared?
Yeah, you have to share the video screen separately. Sorry.
Gotcha. Okay. Let me see here. Gotcha. Okay. How's that?
Perfect. And then you might want to start over because we didn't see any of that. Thank
Okay.
you.
Did you know you can grow your own microgreens? Well, many people enjoy them, but it can be a little expensive. And Mary Ann Pagora is here with us, our master gardener, and is going to give us all the information we need, right? Yeah, well, thank you for being here. This is a neat one here. I'll explain this one a little bit later on, but define microgreens for us.
Okay, microgreens are little vegetable seedlings. They've only been growing for a week or so. They're very quick and easy to grow. And the neat thing is these have so much nutrition in them. They have all the nutrition for a baby plant. So these little microgreens have up to 40 times the nutrition of the big plant. So they're very, very good for you.
Wow. Now, a microgreen can be a number of different things. Like what's in this one? They all look alike to me.
Yeah, we have some kale and some broccoli and some arugula. Sometimes in the mixers you'll get some red, clear.
Yeah, I can see some right there. There's some red one
Yeah,
in
so you
there.
get a little bit of color in
That
there.
might be
So,
kale.
yeah, so that's a nice little spicy mix.
Yeah, that's kind of neat. Now, when do you harvest?
After about 7 to 10 days, these are 10 days, and they're plenty big for harvest. So you would just sit them on the side and cut them with the scissors, rinse them off, you're ready to go.
How about that? Now, you have another collection of them right here. What's in this one here?
Okay, we have the salad mix again. I put a little map up here. We've got butter crunch lettuce, and this is basil. You can grow herbs this way as well.
How about that? Nice collection of them. Now, how old are these?
Again, about 10 days.
10 days on this one, all of them
Yeah.
there. Okay, very good. Okay, so how do we get started?
Okay, well, all you need is a shallow container. This is a takeout container. And you put a little layer of dirt in it, some potting soil, and sprinkle seeds. Okay.
Just any kind of good potting soil will work out.
Any good fine potting soil, and just sprinkle the seeds pretty thickly because you see that they're growing quite thickly, and then you water it well.
There you go. And away they go.
And yeah, and 10 days later,
Where do I keep it?
I would keep it on a sunny windowsill or on a porch, kind of in the shade. If it's cool out, you can put it in the sun, but in the summer, give it a little bit of relief in that sun.
We should say that all these here are pretty much like the cooler conditions.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now, you have something neat here going that you need to tell us about this.
Okay, because since this is so shallow, you would have to water it every day. And you can fill your little microgreens are going to
Go away
well.
for a day.
So here is a self-watering container, and it's so easy to make. You just have a water reservoir, anything that's going to hold water. You have a platform to go on top. This is a foam kneeler.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I just cut the end off of it.
Yeah, there you go.
And this is a capillary mat,
Okay.
and you can keep a belt for it.
Okay.
So you drape it so the ends will go in the water, get it all nice and wet. So that way the water is just going to work out. It will stay nice and wet. And then to plant your plants, I like to use a flower
Mary
filter.
Ann has developed this. I want everybody to know this is kind of neat. There it is.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so this flower sifter, it has mesh on the bottom. So when you put your soil in, it'll get a good contact with that water, and it'll keep your microgreens nicely watered.
And this one here was planted that way.
Yeah, yeah.
If you look at the bottom, you can see all the little roots.
Yeah.
And I guess my question to Mary Ann was, how does it clean up afterwards?
Yeah, it actually just all kind of pulls right out. And after I harvested the microgreens, I tossed this on top of the pile.
Okay, well that's handy. Now when you do this, do you have to do anything special to get the water to come up into the soil, or does it just come up to the capillary nerve?
As long as you got everything nice and wet at the beginning, it'll kind of do a little water truck going up. Just make sure the soil's wet and your capillary matting is wet.
And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Really neat. Now you know, it's easy to grow microgreens, and you can do it very inexpensively. And nice, fresh nutrition to put on your salad, and just eat them right off the vine there.
So there you have it. Like, I guess that's they went over a couple different ways that you can do it. I'm a little more partial towards growing it in the germination media. I think it's just easier. I've had better success with it without it drying out and things like that. The hydroponics can be set up, but it's just, in terms of simplicity, and especially for people just starting out, I would lean towards using the germination media. So what now? Try it out yourself. Try different things. Try different containers. The key here is keeping good records and seeing what works for you, and then from there you repeat and you keep refining. And then if you get good at it, you can get really good at. I've got some of the master gardeners here that are really into timing the production cycles so that they consistently have the greens to go to for their lunches, or however they want to use them. So, and then you can get into estimating yields. And some people, I've even got some master gardeners here that go and try and take it to the next level and start selling them at farmers markets and stuff like that. So here's a bunch of resources for you that will be, like I mentioned, they'll be on here if you want the PDF later on. And then outside of that, that's it in terms of like what I have to present here. I guess I can go ahead and stop sharing the screen now. But I don't know if, like, Aaron, if we just go over to Q&A or what's the procedure here?
Sure. So I did put in the Q&A what they can put it in the chat, what their favorite microgreen is and the container that they use if they would like to share that. I was just putting my answer in, and I teach VA, like veterans. I teach at the VA hospital and kids. So I tend to use little cups with clear lids. And then also I like the basil mix. I find it's pretty super easy for beginners. So somebody said they've had trouble with mold and wood seeding. I think wood seedling soil probably help. And so I use, and when we do it here, we use a propagation mix, a very light sterile mix, and it makes a huge difference for us.
Yeah, that's exactly what we try and use too when we do the classes. It's, I think it's literally labeled as propagation mix.
Yeah. Somebody asked if any marigolds are edible. Question on marigold.
Marigold, I think, is edible.
Yeah. Somebody said they saw another presentation. I think this one was on our Victory Garden page, weighing down the seeds while germinating to make stronger greens. I have not seen that technique. John, are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I've seen people do that. I think one of the books I've seen where they take the top of the container and flip it on top of it, and it raises up the top as well but it's got to be something really lightweight to do that. So just keep that in mind, that, you know, that might be one of those things you have to do trial and error with. You might lose some of your microgreens in the process.
Yeah, I can honestly say I've never had to you know, it's mentioning making them stronger. Mine are so quick that I've never felt like I've needed to do something like that. You know, and of course we're using, I use fast germination seeds. I don't typically use the longer ones, so that might make a difference as well. Let's see, somebody uses a clear berry box, yeah, with the seed starting mix, and was growing sunflower microgreens. Wheatgrass, yes, I would say that does count as a microgreen as well. I also grow these not just for myself, but with a bunny rabbit, so he appreciates them, and then our chickens also appreciate them. So let's see, were there any other questions? But go ahead and put them in your in the chat there if you do. Oh, one I wanted to mention was seeds. You talked a lot about seeds at the beginning, and you know, I purchased both types. I purchased from like Johnny Seed, for instance, in their microgreen section, and they do tend to be more expensive than if I went to just buy a whole bunch of basil seeds, for instance. Is there a reason that I shouldn't just go buy seeds?
From what I've heard or understand, is that how the seeds are packaged and some of the things that are in your standard seeds for vegetable gardening and stuff like that, there can be some like residues in them that you don't want. So it's better to get the things that are labeled specifically for microgreens.
Absolutely. Any other questions, guys? We're right on time today. I did put in the chat box, although it's gone up now, you can find where, let's see if I can find it again. If you are not a member of our Victory Garden group, you can join that. We have a private Facebook group that we have where we answer a lot of questions and help each other out. I'm posting it again. We also have the video link, so you guys can find these videos. And this includes all of them that we've had for the year. And then next week, we're doing beekeeping basics. So if you're interested in honeybees, I know, excuse me, the speaker is going to be going over, he's really interested in the quality of pollen from certain plants. So if you are a pollinator gardener person or into beekeeping, he's going to look at equipment, and then, like I said, the quality of the pollen that you need in your garden to support bees. So that should be interesting. What about food grade seeds or legumes?
I mean, I think that they would be fine if they're if they're able to be used for food. So what do you think, Erin?
That would be my answer as well. If they're food grade seeds, they shouldn't have, you know, fungicides on them or something like that. So I would assume they would be okay.
Well, cool. Well, thank you for having me here, and it was good seeing some familiar folks. And yeah, I really enjoyed being here and talking about microgreens. So thanks for having me, Erin.
Absolutely. And then if you want to send us over your PDF, if anybody would like that, we will put it on the Canvas page, which is our online curriculum for the Victory Garden group, so that they can access it there, like I said, along with the video. So, okay. Anybody has any questions? Let's see, I will go ahead and put my email in the chat box. There it is there. So if you need to get a hold of me, please let us know. Or if you want to see, you know, upcoming classes and have ideas, let us know that as well. Thanks, everybody.